Today, we discuss Pirates prospects in the Arizona Fall League with Anthony Murphy of Baseball America, DK Sports, and Bucks on Deck. You're listening to the Bucco Bantr podcast, brought to you by the Just Baseball Media Network. Cue the music.
Rockin' 101, she compliment my taste. Whiskey in my lemonade, cause I like the way it tastes. Best seats at the Pirates game, they let me run the base. Yeah, my time is like my money, cause I can't afford to waste. Wifey is a lawyer, take my date to my dates. Order steak by the plates, and in case after case, run my race at my pace, clear the grass of the snake.
Anthony, welcome on to Bucco Bantr, man. This has been a long time coming. We're excited to talk prospects with you, Arizona Fall League, all that fun stuff. But first, before we talk prospects, I want to just ask you about you. Like, what inspired you to start writing about Pirates prospects, and how did your journey begin here?
So, well, of course, thanks for having me on, guys. I was really excited for this. I'm glad you guys reached out. We were able to get this going. Really, baseball has always been my first love. I love the sport, love the game. I can sit and talk about it for hours all day. I'm probably one of the most socially awkward people out there, but you start talking about baseball, it's on. I could go all day kind of thing.
Love that. I
knew from an early age I wasn't going to make it to get drafted or play professional baseball. So wanted to find a way to kind of stick around, and was always pretty good at writing and stuff like that. And the two just kind of came together, and here we are kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely relate to that. We played a little bit in college, but obviously not nearly as good enough to make it to the show. And this is like our way of connecting back with the game, because we're constantly talking about baseball all the time. It probably gets so annoying for people around us. Like, even during football season, we're just constantly Pirates. What's going on? Winter meetings, like all that kind of crazy stuff that people would find just absolutely boring. But it's just like, it's riveting to us. So, I mean, luckily we have this podcast where we could just throw our thoughts out there and people engage. And you do great work, man. We're pumped to have you here. And what better timing than the Arizona Fall League coming to an end? We had the draft this summer, and things are getting kicked off this offseason. Wanted to talk Arizona Fall League because a lot of interesting prospects out there. One that tore it up this fall, and I know it's just a small sample size, is Sammy Siani. Guy who I think got the short end of the stick coming out in the COVID years, really had a hard time getting developed. The defense really hasn't been an issue, but it's just getting that back going. And you saw a little bit here and there in Double-A, but nothing like spectacular that stood out in a pretty, average hitting Altoona team until the Fall League, where I think he hit like around like 375, 457, 550 with a 1007 OPS. So what did you see from Siani? Was there an adjustment that was made that you think he can stick with moving forward that can eventually propel him to the big leagues? Or is this just like hey, small sample size, you throw him out there, high elevation, people hit in the Arizona Fall League, like good for him, but it might be the same old?
Well, I think for Siani, it goes a lot further back than just the Fall League. And yeah, if you look at like his numbers during the season, and maybe they didn't exactly like stand out. Like, I think he was just like above average when it comes to like WRC plus and Altoona and stuff like that. Jonathan Mayo on MLB Pipeline, he had a good article about him talking about like he changed like the bat path and stuff like that, and helped him get to the balls quicker and stuff like that. And it kind of looked like he's kind of maybe trying to hit the ball like less hard and just worrying about like making contact and putting the ball in play and letting his speed, he's a pretty quick runner and stuff like that. So kind of just make contact, simplifying things pretty much more or less. And we kind of saw that during the season. Finally broke out of Greensboro and made his way to Altoona. Played pretty well in Altoona. Altoona is not the easiest ballpark to hit at, especially for like left-handed hitters. So like, yeah, he was barely above average, like, statistically, but like, I mean, lefties don't always have the easiest time, and the numbers kind of show through there. And then that just kind of continued into the Fall League. Like, yeah, it's a small sample size, and it's a hitter frenzy, and the pitching wasn't great there.
Right, yeah.
But like, it's if you look past the numbers there, you saw the contact. He's a great defender, strong arm, can play all three outfield positions. He's not a guy that I would say is going to end up like immediately on the radar for like a major league call up or something like that. But he's my whole thought process on him as a prospect has completely changed over this past year. He's a guy that I've kind of just thought like, he's probably just a depth guy at this point. And like, I legitimately see like potential as like a major league contributor to the team at some point in the future, probably this year at some point. Upside, maybe like a fourth or fifth outfield, like a bench outfielder, but someone who's going to play really strong defense. He's going to make contact, and then if he gets on base, he can swipe a bag.
Yeah, I mean, I think his brother emerged this year as a contributor for the Cardinals too, and he kind of has a similar profile. I think Sammy might have a little bit of more power, but I thought maybe he had an opportunity to be named to the 40 man at yesterday's deadline as a fourth outfielder. Do you think he gets claimed? What do you think happens with the guys that were not protected? Because the Pirates didn't protect anybody.
Yeah, I don't think you'll have to worry about him getting taken. I still think there's like he played a good amount of the season in Double-A, but still like newer to the level. I don't think you have to worry about with that. I think at this point, like there's not much out there like Rule 5 wise, and I think anyone you're going to be kind of looking for maybe Triple-A, like trying to pluck off other people's like Triple-A rosters and stuff like that. So I think you could hide Siani and not have to worry about losing him at this point. And then if you kind of lose him, like, I mean, it'll probably be fine. I think he's on the right path, but like there's still some work to do. I do think he'll probably start the year in the Indianapolis outfield, and hopefully make his debut some of the time this year.
Right. I mean, in a system short of bats, he's like one of a few that's left standing after Charles McAdoo left this year. And, I want to get into quick risers a little bit later, but Termarr Johnson, a guy who, hopefully we expect to see in Indianapolis for some time next year. 20 years old still. I'm glad he got the reps out in the fall league. I mean, he still is showing the advanced approach at the plate, probably just as advanced as anybody in the entire minor league, system. You can make an argument that his approach at the plate and his eye for the strike zone is just as advanced as anybody in the league. The problem has just been general contact in the zone, but he's been able to flash power that kind of makes up for that. And possibly, I think the Pirates maybe drafted him as like this, like very raw, like pure hitter, but like maybe now that profile is starting to turn more into power, and they'll take that with the on base percentage. Did you see anything from Termarr out there, and how do you see him contributing next year with the bat and then defensively as well? Because I know that's been a position where, they're going to get him reps at shortstop, but he doesn't really project on the left side of the infield. So it's really just going to be his bat, most likely, that gets him to the show. But what's your opinion on Termarr generally moving forward?
Termarr is a guy, so we're like, you kind of watch him this year, and he took a hit in a lot of like the prospect rankings and stuff like that, which makes sense. Where they value like positional flexibility and like playing a premium position, and Tamar's going to be limited to second base. He gets time at shortstop and everything like that, but from what I've seen, I wouldn't hold too much stock in him playing that at the next level. I think the main takeaway that I had from Termarr in the fall league was even at 20, he has probably the best strike zone judgment of like any hitter in the minors. I've seen him a couple times now, or I've seen him. I saw him in Greensboro towards the end of last year, and he does not go out of the zone. It's incredible to watch someone that age to be that aware of it. I know you probably hope that the average and like the overall hit tool was a little bit better, especially based off his height. I think that just kind of leads to like hit tools on prep kids coming out of the draft. You can almost always throw into the trash. Like you don't know what kind of competition they face. You don't know how they're going to adjust and stuff like that. So him getting like the 70 hit tool from Pipeline, that I just, the way I thought about it is he's a prep kid coming into the pro ranks. So like, I'll give him the kind of leeway that I would give just any other prep kid that gets drafted kind of thing. I
mean, also I'm more of a pitcher. I was a pitcher in college, but to me, he has a violent swing. So like putting a 70 grade on his hit tool seems kind of aggressive, especially, for a prep guy. But I think people were freaking out by his slash line. Like, he's still 20 years old. He's still very young. And he reached Altoona last year. So he doesn't have a shortage of confidence. I'll tell you that. Listening to interviews with him, and he's definitely very confident. So you got to like bet on the makeup there. I'm excited for Tamar. But that being said, there was another guy in Arizona Fall League that I want to touch on real quick. Kervin Pichardo. We acquired him from San Diego. Was that in a Jackson Wolf trade?
Yep. They got Jackson Wolf in a trade, and then they traded him back to the Padres for Pichardo.
So he finished Arizona Fall League above 300. I think it was like 309. To me, he seems like more of a backup, like a Alika Williams role type of player. What do you think of Kervin Pichardo? Can he make it to that next level? I mean, I think he'll probably be in Indianapolis next year, but I want to get your thoughts on him too.
He's an interesting prospect because like when the Pirates traded for him, like, you know, me and a couple of the guys on the site on Bucks on Deck, we were talking, and I think it got past all of us that he was still just 22 years old. Like, he's still like on the younger side when it comes, and he played the entire year in Double A Altoona, which, I mean, 22 years old at Double A is, you know, a pretty solid placement for it. And
sure,
you know, he held his own. There's some swing and miss concerns that I'd be worried about, like going into AAA and in the majors. He doesn't walk much. Defensively, he's versatile. Like, he played at least 30 games at each infield position. He's not a great defender, but like he's definitely serviceable at each of them. I'm still not 100% sold on it, but he's a guy that's like very, very interesting. Like, maybe I would have liked to see the numbers pop a little bit more, knowing how like the fall league numbers were and stuff like that. But he was solid each time out there, and he's definitely a guy that I'm keeping an eye on next year, who, with the right kind of adjustments, with maybe the right kind of like instructions, can take that step into maybe being some sort of like bench player kind of thing.
Anthony, was there anyone in the fall league that just surprised you? It could be on the offense side, pitching, somebody that went out there that maybe you either weren't that high on, that maybe showed some type of flash, or just somebody who you think is continually to get better?
Well, so one guy that I was very, I don't want to say surprised, but I was happy with how everything kind of ended for him. I've always been like fairly high on Christian Curtis.
Love Curtis, man.
It's a great story. I had a chance to talk to him in Bradenton. You know, he told me about the surgery, and I know there's they had an article similar to that on MLB.com.
We had him on the pod too. He told us about it. It was pretty interesting. Yeah.
So like, great story to, you know, the whole comeback kind of thing and everything like that. And he had some moments to where like the control got away from him and stuff like that. And, you know, he told me a lot of times when that happens, it's, you know, the feeling in his hand kind of gets away from him. Yep. So he has the issues with that. But the stuff is just, when he keeps it in the zone, the stuff is just like so good and just a solid pitcher. And like, I mean, the ERA isn't great. Or what is it? I had someone tell me like the average ERA for pitchers in the fall league was like 5.40 or 5.50 or something like that.
He's below that. And
he was below. He was like, it was like a 4.67. He finished with that. So I mean, maybe overall it doesn't look great, but like in the bigger scope of how everyone else performed, it was a little bit above average with that. And being the fact that he pitched in at Bradenton all year in Single A, the fact that he was facing some guys that were, you know, double, triple A and stuff like that, and held his own a lot. And he had a couple like really solid outings into. He had one game that ended up getting postponed because of rain. He struck out the side in the first inning, and then they postponed it going into the second. And so, like, obviously when they restarted the next day, his day was over. But like he had some really good moments there, and like he's a guy I've always been high on, and so that was a good viewing from him.
That's how Rays major league games are going to be next year, because we all know it rains every day in Florida, unfortunately. Yeah. For outdoor games. But Christian too, he also has very little mileage on his arm too, and people don't know that just given his story. So I'm excited to see what they do with him next year. Hopefully he's in Greensboro and he can stretch it out a little bit more. But I want to move away from the Arizona Fall League a little bit. This draft class, 2024 draft class, we know that this organization has a plethora of pitchers. They've been able to develop pitching, but there's a hole, upper level bats for sure. And I'm usually like, take best guy available in the draft, but in a college heavy draft, it felt like the right opportunity to replenish some upper level bats. What did you think about their draft this year and the haul that they got in the first few rounds?
I was a big fan of it overall.
Okay.
I'm a big pitching guy. So just to shout out Levi Sterling, I thought was a fantastic pick. The more I've read on him, the more video I've watched of him, I love Levi Sterling. I think he's going to be in the Pirates system. He's the sky's the limit kind of thing with him. But like on the hitting thing, they went like prep heavy on there, and obviously there's some risk there. And like there's some hitters there. Like I was a big Braden Montgomery fan going into the season and everything like that.
Same.
Unfortunate with the injury and stuff like that. I don't know how much that may have played a factor into it overall. But I still liked it. I don't think. Yes, it would have been nice to take like a college level hitter that maybe could move faster and get to the majors. But I don't think anyone that was available at that point, like their upside was just like so like you're looking at like maybe like a James Tibbs
yeah,
like they're already talking about it's just like a platoon guy against righties and stuff like that. So like I'd rather at this point, yes, the Pirates need hitting and maybe like more guaranteed hitting, but like I'm okay with swinging the fence on someone with like Connor Griffin, because even though he's like a prep guy, there's like a little bit of a built-in like floor with him, because like he has the potential to be like a Gold Glove center fielder with like plus power, and like 30, like he stole like what was it, like 82 bases?
Yeah, some crazy number like that.
That's ridiculous. And so like with those tools, like I'm just gonna take, and like maybe be like, well, the Pirates don't have a great track record of like developing hitters, but sometimes when you get a guy with those kind of tools, like the skill just plays for itself. And like he's the kind of guy that like regardless of the teaching he's just so naturally gifted that like I'll place my money on it at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. One guy I'm really high on too is Eddie Reinders. What do you have on him? He seems like a
right out of my mouth, Scotty.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm a big Eddie Reinders fan.
So I'm starting to feel like I wasn't special when I started saying like, yeah, like I think I'm gonna be like an Eddie Reinders guy, and I'm gonna lead the charge on it when no one else is talking about him. But I think like the secret's out on it, because like I've seen it like all over Twitter, all over the place, and people talk. I think, and I saw him play like one of the Bridge League games, and he has the build to like put up, like he's a guy who I feel like has like 25, 30 home run potential kind of thing, like that. Yeah, I'm excited to see him play. I'm excited to see him get going. I imagine he starts in like the complex league, plays in the complex league this year. But like, yeah, I have my Bradenton trip already planned out for this year, and he's at the top of the list of guys I'm looking forward to checking out this year.
Yeah, he's got a sweet lefty swing, and no shortage of shortstops, man. I mean, you got Wyatt Sanford too, who snuck into a lot of people's top 10 prospects there. I know that's more of like the opposite of a lot of guys when you're looking at hit tool. Him, it's really like defense, and then you got to develop the hit tool even more. Do you like him being like as a top 10 guy? Do you think he belongs in that group, or is that maybe a little bit more to dream on there?
I think like you can kind of bring it back to like the Tamar thing too. You know, a lot of the sites and all that, they value like the position that you'll play and the value you give them defensively. So he's going to get such a huge boost automatically because he's 18 years old and they feel he's a surefire shortstop at that point. And I do believe, watching some video and some of the other stuff I've read, I do believe like the hitting's maybe a little bit better than some give him credit for at this point. But I don't mind him. I actually don't. I think if you're referring back to like the Baseball America thing, the only thing I would change about that is I'd probably flip flop him and Levi Sterling. But I don't mind where Wyatt Sanford's at. I think I love the heavy shortstop approach, just because I think the Pirates have gotten into a tendency of drafting guys who like may have been playing like shortstop in high school or college, but like, they're not going to be a shortstop. And yet they kind of like force this situation and kind of keep them, they drafted guys who, like Griffin, Reinders probably less much. And then Sanford, they're all like shortstops, and they're all, and I like building that way, just because you draft the best athletes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you
bet on the athleticism for sure.
Yeah. And look at like Jackson Merrill. Like he can play any center field or going into the season, but he's an athlete. So like, okay, we're going to stick you in center field. And I mean, if it wasn't for Paul Skeen's historic year, like I think Jackson Merrill's probably like the runaway like rookie leader.
Sure.
Where do you think Connor Griffin starts in 25? Does he see affiliated ball?
Being the top 10 guy, I can see him starting in Bradenton this year. I think you get him out there and just kind of let him go. He looked, from everything that I have heard and the little bit I was able to see, there's the concerns about the hit tool. He looked a lot better than I was expecting. I don't know if it was just because I heard that I like had my expectations like towards the bottom, so like it was easy to surpass it. But he made some contact on some difficult pitches, on some breaking pitches, and he was able to drive the ball well. So I think he's ahead of where some people thought with the hitting. So it wouldn't surprise me if he starts just straight in Bradenton and gets going.
Going back, I'm looking at this draft class. Eddie Reinders was committed to Kent State, which tells me he had no plans on going to college.
They have a good program. They have
a good program, but like, I don't know, man. I just feel like
he was never going to college. I said it on the our podcast on Bucks on Deck. You pick Kent State whenever like you're not going to school. That's that decision there.
Right. It's like I'll go to that one, sure. Yeah, because I mean, like Sanford, Texas A&M. I mean, you got Texas, Griffins, and LSU guys. So I mean, high elite schools. Like you love to see it. Let's talk a little bit more about the guys that are already in the system, because there's guys who just haven't panned out lately, and you're still dreaming on like the athleticism and just the tools that they provide, i.e., Lonnie White Jr., right? A guy that is committed to Penn State. The Pirates saved him. They bring him in. Don't have to do that anymore. But just really hasn't panned out. And you see the power potential. You see the arm and the speed, but he just can't stay healthy and he can't put it together. Do you think for a guy like that, this is kind of a make or break year in terms of his prospect status and how he's moving through the system?
I think this is definitely a big year for him. I try to look at it too, as well as like, let's say he did go to Penn State and do the football, baseball thing. Last year would have been his draft year. And then he would have been drafted in 2024. So 2025, he's probably starting the year in Greensboro anyways, because that's where most college guys start there. So he's still technically kind of ahead. The issue with him has been staying on the field. He played a career high in games this year, and it was still just 80. He still didn't top 100 games. It was like 80, 85, 89. It was around 80 games or something like that he played. So, and the fact that, and you could also draw some parallels with him with like Bubba Chandler, because they were both multi-sport athletes in high school. And, Chandler, once he was able to focus solely on pitching, that's where you saw, like him take off. The fact that, White is finally just focusing on baseball, but now he's had to deal with these injuries has forced him to miss time. And even this past year, where he's played the most games he's ever played, he still was on the injured list a couple times. So I think the more he just hasn't had the chance to have that clicking moment where everything just kind of comes together, and he realizes like, man, he is one of the most talented players on the baseball field. Every time he goes out there, he just has to go out there enough to, a big thing that every time when I talk to a lot of the players in Greensboro, they talk about dealing with failure. And a lot of these kids have never dealt with failure a lot. So they're having to learn how to deal with it on the mental and physical side and stuff like that. I think the more that he gets to deal with that and learn how to overcome it, he'll finally and stay on the field. He'll finally have that clicking moment where everything just comes together for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he kind of reminds me a little bit of a Jordan Adams from the Angels system, I think he was committed to UNC for football, and it took him a while, and I think they just DFA'd him the other day, but he showed glimpses of this just pure athleticism, and this year he showed power for sure. So like you said, 2025 would technically be his first year, and he'd probably be going to Greensboro anyway. So now it's time to let's try to get that hit tool improved somewhat and see what he can do there, because I think he played, like you said, 80 to 90 games this year. Yeah. Let's see if he can get to 100 next year, because he hasn't played all that much in his first 3 seasons. But another guy that struggled this year, Anthony Solomedo. Anthony Solometo, Adam and I were down at spring training. We actually saw him throw in his first simulated game after his flu that was going around the spring training complex, and it was bad. Like it was on the backfield. It's at Pirate City. It was against the Orioles. I think Billy Cook was in that game. Funny enough, and it was bad. And I think the helium was high on him at first. I don't think he has top of the rotation stuff, but I think he has deception that could play in the middle to back end of a rotation. Are you worried about Solometo? What are your thoughts on him and this year? Is it just a lost year, or are there legitimate concerns?
I think to an extent, yes, you have to be a little bit concerned about it. But I try to remember that, cliche, but development isn't linear. Sometimes prospects take a step back. He's still super young. He'll probably repeat Altoona again this year. Still going to be young for the level. But yeah, because he's not going to overpower anyone with this stuff. So it's all going to come from deception and control and command of all his pitches. So it's just going to be a matter of, getting the fastball. The fastball, he's not going to throw it hard, but if he can get it back up to the 91, 92 with the deception and the extension that he has, it's going to look a lot better. I know someone had sent me a video of a game he pitched in high school, and he was 94, 95 in high school. So it'd be nice if you could get back to that again. He's probably a back of the rotation kind of guy. I would say probably be but he's more of a safer thing. It's all going to come down to the control. If you can get the control back, if you can make it through the whole year without kind of wearing down and stuff like that, kind of seems like he had an off-season routine that he was ready to go through. He realized what the issue was and he wants to attack it and stuff like that. So
it really I think even with like you said, he set 94, 95 in high school. Even if he sits 91, 92 with that extension, that perceived velocity is going to be 93, 94. So if he can sit in that range, that'd be perfect back end rotation guy.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I mean, with this system, at first you're okay, Solometo is a guy. This is who we're expecting to be up there with Skeens and Chandler eventually. But now he's kind of fallen out of that talk. And you got other guys coming in like Hunter Barco, who again has dealt with his injury past in his history, but a college arm who had a pretty good year before he got hurt again, but he's going to be in Altoona. What do you see his projection being for Hunter Barco, given that he's 23 years old?
So Barco was interesting because I saw him pitch, he pitched a little bit in Bradenton towards the end of the 2023 season. And the slider and the changeup looked really good, but the fastball was super underwhelming. It was averaging 90. The shape wasn't great for it. Had some issues locating it. Came into spring this year. He pitched in the spring breakout, and he was 94, 95. The shape on it was really good, and it's kind of okay, well now we're kind of cooking with something here. The fastball is a lot better. He's hitting his spots a lot better. Gets to Greensboro. Bows through Greensboro. Unfortunately, he has the injury. At least it wasn't it was an arm injury. I think he hurt his knee trying to play a grounder or something like that in Altoona. So didn't get much exposure there. I really like Barco. I really like Barco a lot more that the fastball started playing up a lot more.
Right.
I can see. He's 24, so he'll be 24. I think by the time the next season starts. So he's a guy that you're probably going to want to try to work through fairly quickly. But with his track record and stuff like that, it wouldn't surprise me if they can get him through through Indianapolis for a good part of the year and stuff like that. But he's another guy that I'd probably say the safe projection on him is probably another back of the rotation kind of guy. He probably has upside to where he could probably be a middle of the rotation guy. But I'd probably put a safer thing on it, a back end guy. Which when you have Paul Skeens, Jared Jones, probably Bubba Chandler, and stuff, at this point you're probably just looking for guys to fill out the back of the rotation anyways.
Yeah, I was going to say, just wrong situation to be a middle of the rotation type of guy. Maybe somewhere else, though, right? He left out Mitch Keller too. You're definitely fighting for one of those last spots. But let's stick with some arms. And Scott, I don't know if you were going to stick with some arms or if you had anyone in mind because I know you're in love with the pitching side of things.
Yeah.
So you want to go ahead?
I was just going to ask you real quick because we've seen them part with some arms over the past year, like Jackson Wolf, JT Brubaker. I saw you tweet the other day about Omar Cruz. I think he went back and forth from San Diego to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Another arm that I was sad to see leave at the deadline was Luis Peralta, younger brother of Freddie Peralta. Do you think he had a potential role in this bullpen? Because this is something like going into this season, we thought bullpen was a strength. And now we're like going into this offseason saying like, hey, we need to add a few arms. And Eddie Yean wasn't protected. I could see him being claimed potentially as a maybe for like a non-contender at bullpen depth. Yeah. But Luis Peralta did pretty well in Colorado when he got called up this year. So
yeah. Luis Peralta has been a guy that I've been kind of following along with since pretty much since coming out of COVID in 2021 when the minor leagues finally came back. He has always had the stuff. It took him a couple years to get out of Bradenton because the control was just so bad. This stuff was finally they kicked him into the bullpen, and with Greensboro he just took off and then out to. I think. You can talk to anyone over on Bucks on Deck, and they would say that all of us were unanimous thinking that like they would have been 100% better to just bring Peralta up and throw him into the bullpen, even during this past season. And now you kind of just gave up maybe he's not going to be like a back of the bullpen kind of guy, but he should be like a decent like middle inning relief guy. 6 years of control, going to come very cheap the next couple of years, probably be cheap the entire time. And you kind of just gave him up for like a rental left-handed reliever.
Who won't be back next year.
Who won't be back this year.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a trade that like I would say that I would have given like a big F on overall for that. So.
Yeah, I mean, Jay, that's a rough look. The last arm I wanted to touch on is one that's going to probably continue in Bradenton next year, Xander Meath. His stuff can be absolutely disgusting. He can pump it up. The arm, it's a little funky. What do you expect from him next year? Do you think he could be a quick riser? Is there just more development there where they need to make him more consistent with the arm slot or the mechanics to actually stay a starting pitcher? Or is he projecting more as like a high leverage guy in the bullpen?
I think he has the chance to be a unicornish type of pitcher because, like, if you're able to keep him in the rotation, like you're dealing. So, like his arm slot, like I looked it up and I looked at like as far back as I can go on like a Baseball Savant, and there aren't many starting pitchers who have been able to stick in the rotation at that arm slot he throws from. That is generally something
I have a
you
comp.
see.
I have a comp. I'm interested to hear who that is that you look back on, but
I can't remember who it was there. I had someone who like the specs for their fastball were like dead on with each other. I'll have to go dig it up. I'm interested to see if we're thinking about the same person because I can't remember. I can't think back to who it was. This was during like the season that I had looked it up when I finally got data on him.
Well, no, I was just thinking like when I've seen him pitch, he has a lot of movement on his ball. He kind of reminds me of like a Justin Masterson or a Tanner Houck in Boston. I don't know if that.
Well, I think the Tanner Houck was like a direct comparison they made after the draft because of the arm slot. And I think they were both from the same area, like they're drafted in the same like region and stuff like that. So I see a scenario where he kind of blows through like the lower levels just because that arm angle makes every at bat so uncomfortable. Like what is it? I was putting together some video the other day, and just the amount of bad swings, like even righty on righty with the fastball that kind of like just barrels back into the hands. Like lower level hitters are going to have a hard time hitting that. It's going to be a matter of how many strikes, how much strikes he can throw at that arm slot. It has the making of being a very good, because he's gotten up into the upper 90s even from that arm slot. He's kind of backed away from it in Bradenton to try to throw strike. Like he had more walks than innings pitched in Bradenton this past year. I know some hitters have issues with the ABS, the automatic strike zone, like their first go around with it. So part of that could have been playing into it. Like obviously the walk's that bad. It's not just that. So he's a guy I'm very excited on, but I do believe that there's just based off like historical evidence, there's a lot of like reliever risk with him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Especially with that arm slot, you got to put reliever risk on that. But I have maybe a couple more questions, but one I'm interested to hear your opinion on. We might be a prospect we've already mentioned, but who is an under the radar prospect, like outside of the Bubba Chandler, Termarr Johnson tier, that you are really excited about in this system?
So I can give the hitter or the pitcher, because there's two that there's two that I will talk about at any given chance, whether like people ask for it or not. They're like two players that I bring up. We'll start on the pitching side, and that's Alessandro Urcolani, the righty from San Marino.
He's Italian. Yeah, love that.
Yeah, he's
good numbers this year.
Yeah, they slipped him to the bullpen. I think he was like, I talked to him in Greensboro. He said he was like he was dealing with some like I think he was like he got sick or something like that, and so he missed a week or so. So they put him in the bullpen to kind of like start stretching him back out. And then it just went so well that they just kind of kept him there. He does feel like he'll probably be back in the rotation next year, but they haven't. At that point when I talked to him, they hadn't really talked about it yet. But he does feel like he'll move back into the rotation. He's just the fastball. You know, like I'm really big into like analytics and stuff. You know, like pitch shape and all that kind of stuff. The fastball really pops with that. The cutter when he went to the fall league last year. The cutter was Baseball America had an article with like the best pitches with their Stuff Plus model, and his cutter was on the list there. But he was like the youngest player there. So the fastball cutter play really well off each other. Like if he stays in the bullpen, like that fastball and cutter can probably carry him straight to the majors. Is
it like a vertical fastball, or is it more of a horizontal like tailing fastball?
There's a lot. It gets a lot of induced vertical break on it. It comes from the arm angle is about average on it. So the higher the arm slot, the easier it is to get like the induced vert and stuff like that.
Sure.
So, but the fastball is appeasing. Like the cutter's really good. He's working on a slider and the changeup. Didn't throw the changeup much. So obviously, if he's working back in the rotation, you want to see that more. But just the makeup's really good. The stuff is really good, and he's another young guy. He didn't turn 20 until after the regular season started. So there's a chance that he's 20 years old again in pitching in Altoona to start if they give him the push. And they've been very aggressive with them because like it just feels like they're very high on him at this point.
Nice.
How about a bat? Yeah.
The bat. So like he's a guy that's starting to gain a little more traction, especially now with like the Rule 5 stuff. But I have been a very big like Omar Alfonso guy for a couple years. Took a step forward this year. The exit velocities all went up, yet the contact rates didn't dip. He had like an 85% in zone contact rate in Bradenton, which in a system that has struggled making contact, like he's probably one of the better contact hitters there. Came up to had some issues like elevating the ball. Got to Greensboro, I guess realized how easy it is to go deep in Greensboro, so he started elevating a little bit more. I think he hit like 5 home runs in 20 games. In Greensboro. So I saw him 2 separate times last year, and he hit a home run like in Bradenton and Greensboro while I was there. He's just very solid hitter. The power's there. I don't know if he's gonna stick behind the plate. He's got a good arm. Like he threw out almost 50% of base stealers in his little bit of time in Greensboro. Probably looking at like a catcher / first base guy. May end up being like a guy you'll have to platoon. But like at those 2 positions, those are the positions that you're okay like platooning with at that point. You're not going to stick a catcher behind the plate for 130 games anymore. So like if you're going to platoon him, catcher's the perfect place to platoon him at. So but he's just because he's high contact, high exit velocity guy. Don't have many of those guys that can do both in the system. So.
Right. Yeah, I think he's going to be safe, Scotty, because there's not a lot of teams that are throwing
unless he goes in the minor league phase of the Rule 5 draft. But I don't know.
He'll get protected. So like each team, this isn't posted like publicly and everything like that. But the minor league phase, you're allowed to protect up to like 38 minor leaguers from that as well. So he'll be safe from that. I don't think you'll have to worry about a 21, 22-year-old that's only played 20 games in high A.
Yeah.
Like the bench, your bench is so spread days in the majors. Like you can't afford to hide someone that's like a catcher.
Right. Well, I wanted to talk about a little bit more of the bats in the system, but I think we've touched on it a little bit, other than like, the obvious with like Termarr Johnson and Alfonso. Is there anyone else that you think could contribute this year in the system? I mean, I know this is like we're throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks, but is there anyone that you think could be either like a late call up or could actually be a depth piece on this team?
So I think you're starting to, at that point, you'd probably be crossing into like the Sammy Siani territory again. He's probably a guy, if things go right late in the season. And I think your big guys that you're looking like prospect wise to contribute this year is going to be like Billy Cook and Nick York, which we've already seen a little bit from him. Nick York is a guy that I like going into the 2020 draft. So I was excited when they traded for him. Great hit tool.
Trade. Yeah.
Sneaky power, stuff like that. So I think he's going to be a real strong contributor. Shung-Chae Chang, I think with the right kind of adjustments the right way and stuff like that, he's a really good defender. And defense maybe isn't the strongest suit up in Pittsburgh at times. So he's a guy maybe that can help off the bench defensively. But I think the upper levels you're kind of limited option wise if you're looking for like prospect help. The biggest so
I think my last question is like what trends are you noticing across the Pirates farm system? Are there specific skills or traits that you think that this organization is prioritizing?
So like pitching wise, you can definitely see that they pay attention to certain metrics, certain analytics and stuff like that. They have a lot of pitchers that throw maybe from a lower than average arm slot that gets a lot of ride and carry. Maybe you don't necessarily have to throw the hardest, but it still plays well up in the zone. Something like Thomas Harrington, that kind of stuff. But I noticed a lot of they dig very deep into like the analytics and stuff like that when it comes to the pitching. On the hitting side, you see, especially in the lower levels, there's a lot of guys who it does feel like that maybe they're more okay with guys who they just want them to just swing as hard as they can. And like, so if they make contact, they're going to hit it hard. They had Esmeralda Valdez. He led the Florida State League in home runs this past year. Axial Plaz hit 15 in like 70 games in Bradenton. So they have a lot of guys who can make very good, very hard contact. It's just the overall contact, side of things.
Tony Blanco might fall into that category too. I don't know. I
watched a stream game of a game in the complex, and he hit a ball like 120 miles an hour.
He's huge. We walked past him. He's giant.
There's one. So in May, I went down to Bradenton for a week, and a lot of the guys, I got to pull up the website real quick, get the number, and figure out who it is. Tony Blanco walked by me, and I was just like, "That's Tony Blanco."
He's like a refrigerator, man. He's 6'7", 243.
That is a giant.
At 19, is he? He's an outfielder. I mean, is he kind of pigeonholing himself into like a corner spot? I mean, he has to be, right? Like a first base or like a right field.
I don't think he's actually they still haven't listed an outfielder. I don't think he's actually played a game in the outfield in his career. I think it's all been first base DH. Which I think that's he probably ends up as a DH. It's
that big at that age.
He doesn't play the field much. But he's an interesting guy just because it's going to be the power that has to carry him the whole way because he's a DH. And there's strikeout concerns. I thought it looked like he did a lot better than I expected this past year. There's still some issues with it, but his carrying thing is going to be the power. He hits the ball super hard, and it's going to go super far. And
right, yeah. I mean, if you're questioning hey, why can't he be an outfielder if he's 6'7" because O'Neal Cruz is an outfielder? Blanco's pushing 250. O'Neal Cruz is listed at 215. So I mean, he's a big boy. You got to get moving to really be good out there. Anthony, we cannot thank you enough for joining us. We are excited to have you on the show going into the season, hopefully another time this off season to talk prospects as free agency kicks along and things get moving here. For the listeners, can you tell them where to find all of your work?
So Bucks on Deck Substack, that's my main site on there. And we give like daily updates and features all throughout the off season too. DK Pittsburgh Sports, I contribute some stuff on the minor league side there. I do like a prospect of the day over there, kind of pick a random prospect and kind of give some video and some breakdown and stuff like that. And then recently I became the Pirates correspondent for Baseball America. I had my first article out earlier in the week on Mitch Jeb. So yeah.
Nice. I'm sure Jim Rosati loved that one.
He did. I saved that. It worked out perfectly too, because like Mitch Jeb was like the last person I had quotes on for my Greensboro trip, and then it's like, well, this just works out perfectly. Jim will love this.
Amazing. Well, congrats on the recent success, and can't wait to see what you do with Baseball America. And then until next time, guys, go check out the video on YouTube, like, subscribe, leave a comment, let us know what you want to hear from us or Anthony. Go listen to the episode on any streaming site, download the episode, leave a 5-star review. And then, Scott, the holidays are coming up. Bucco Bantr store is still up and running. Go get yourself some merch. Maybe we'll do a little Black Friday sale. We appreciate everybody for listening. We love you all, and raise it.
Raise it.
Rockin' 101, she compliment my taste. Whiskey in my lemonade, cause I like the way it tastes. Best seats at the Pirates game, they let me run the base. Yeah, my time is like my money, cause I can't afford to waste. Wifey is a lawyer, take my date to my dates, or the steak by the plates and it